The energy regulator Ofgem has just made an announcement that affects 85% of households in the UK, setting a new price cap for the typical gas and electricity bill for a home in England, Wales or Scotland. This one will kick in October, and it is £3,549 a year. You'll know for yourselves how fast energy bills have already been rising. This time last year, households were paying around £1,100 a year. We're now at just under £2,000, and we have this new figure for October, and another sharp increase is expected in January. Jonathan Brearley is Chief Executive of the regulator Ofgem, which sets the cap, and he's here in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is a figure that will be shocking for many, many people. How can prices rise so much in one go?
Well, Michelle, as I've said many times before, I spend a great deal of my time talking directly to customers, and I know this will be devastating for many families when they hear how much their energy bills are going to go up. But let me explain what's happening out there in the market which is causing this. So last year, we already saw countries growing faster than we thought, and that created an increase in price that we saw last September and came through last April. But over and above that, we have seen the slow and deliberate shut-off of one of Europe's major suppliers, Russia, of their gas. Now, that has caused enormous price spikes within the market. So right now, when I look at winter prices, they are 15 times the normal price that led to that 1,100 bill you described before. To give you an idea, that means that to fill your car, if that were happening in petrol, would cost £400 to £500 each time you filled your car. So we are seeing a dramatic change in the cost of energy that we need to buy, and ultimately that drives this figure of £3,549.
And there were forecasts of exactly this figure, and you were saying people needed to be cautious. You didn't sound convinced that we would get to the figure that you yourselves have announced today.
So this figure, we have been confident for some time it would be in this region, but what we do say is when you look out to January, and particularly out to April, things remain very uncertain. Now, what we accept, given the market that we're seeing, that over and above this figure, the difficult news I have to give today is that prices look like they are continuing to rise. How much they rise and what that means remains uncertain because we're simply not collecting the data.
Okay.
And the market is changing day by day.
Okay, but the continuing to rise and the uncertainty, they're not going to go down, are they? We can say that for sure. They're probably unlikely to be stable. So therefore, above £4,000 is not unreasonable for January.
Well, look, there is a possibility that things change. There is a possibility, for example, there is peace in Russia, Ukraine, but that doesn't look likely. So yes, we accept there is significant pricing pressure, not only from today, but also through January and potentially into next year. What we don't do is give figures to that because things change massively. I came on this show only 2.5 weeks ago. Prices have changed by 50% just in that time.
People aren't going to be able to pay these bills. It's not just a question anymore of, you'll cut other things and you'll struggle to pay it. Many people will not be able to pay these bills. This will break down to about £300 a month that people will have to find if you spread it equally over the course of the year. And larger households will be paying more.
So we have done and looked at everything we can do as a regulator to address this figure. There's a number of things we do to make sure that companies treat their vulnerable customers well. There's a number of vulnerability schemes that we run. But the truth is, this is beyond the capacity of the regulator and the industry to address. So what we are saying today is, look, we have 10 days now until we have a new administration, and we have a new Prime Minister and a new ministerial team. What I am clear about is that the Prime Minister, with his or her ministerial team, will need to act urgently and decisively to address this. All of us, with the government, need to get ahead of this problem and manage it on behalf of customers because, as you say, the outlook for winter without any action looks very difficult indeed.
Is that an acceptance from you that the system that you preside over isn't fit for purpose anymore?
So this isn't about the regulation of the system. This isn't about how we run the pricing system that we have. This is about the need for other levers to make sure that customers...
Yes, but that is an acceptance, isn't it? that your system can't control prices to the extent that are affordable for people. So what's happening in the energy market is way beyond the scale of what your remit originally was and what you can do.
Well, I mean, if you look at what the price cap was designed to do, the price cap was designed to prevent those unfair profits over and above the costs that we're seeing. So the price cap is doing that. But the price cap was never there to say that we could somehow subsidise energy or reduce energy below the cost at which companies have to pay to buy it. So yes, it does need external influence. It needs government, the regulator, the industry and NGOs all to work together to find a solution to this. My main point, and I accept that, Michelle, is that without government intervention as part of that solution, it's unlikely we'll be able to address the sorts of prices you see today. And as you say, many households will be under financial stress when they hear about the sorts of figures we're describing today.
Right, but there are lots of companies, aren't they, making a lot of profits in this scenario? And I don't just mean the producers, I mean some of the suppliers as well, depending on what their overall business framework is.
Well, we look at the supplier profits very closely, as you can imagine. Across the industry, the margins are zero. So companies are not making money on average.
Across the industry, but some are, aren't they? For example, if they're part of a group that also includes energy producers.
Well, and anyone who is producing energy clearly is in a different part of the business and not part of the business that Ofgem regulates. So the part that we regulate has about zero margins. But there is money being made elsewhere in the industry, but that's not something that Ofgem can intervene on.
But when you set the price cap like this, when you allow it to rise, and I understand you've explained the reasons for doing it, you are on the side more, arguably, of the suppliers than the consumers. That was certainly what Christine Farnish, who used to be on the board of Ofgem, said when she resigned.
Look, Christine is a close colleague of mine and someone that I've spent a great deal of time, my 6.5 years in Ofgem, I've spent closely with Christine. But the point is the regulator has to look at all the costs that fall on customers. And what did we learn last year? We learned that when a company fails, customers need to find the money collectively to pay for the energy for those customers of a failed company to move. That costs money. So what we've got to make sure is we don't just look at costs today, but we look at costs that might be loaded on tomorrow. And as you yourself have said, look, if you think about how the market is changing, you think about what might be there in January, in April next year, to add costs to that doesn't seem like a reasonable thing to do. So we are taking difficult decisions. We are making really big trade-offs. But what we can't do is somehow regulate the industry so that companies have to pay less than it costs to buy the energy they need to buy.
Right, but the difficult decisions you say you're making, ultimately it's the consumer that is paying for them to keep some of the supplies in the market, and that's going to be a hard thing for people to accept when they're faced with these bills.
Well, all of the decisions that we make, all of the things that we do, don't take away from the fundamental. And the fundamental is, given what Russia is doing in Europe, given the action that's being taken, and energy is going up to 15 times what it cost before. So even though some of these decisions will make a difference potentially, the fundamental strategic point is prices are increasing incredibly fast. That's why we are saying we need to work with the new ministerial team, we need to work with the industry, we need to work with NGOs, all of us need to get ahead of this to make sure we look after customers this winter.
And particularly you've made a call to the next Prime Minister.
Absolutely.
Just now. One final point, which is about people on prepayment meters, because they pay more, and I know you have a separate price cap for people on prepayment meters. Now, some people do go on those meters out of choice, some don't, some are put on them by their energy suppliers. Should that still be allowed? Because the effect of it is to make some of those least able to pay more.
So we have very strict rules for how you treat a customer who is struggling to pay their bills. We make sure that companies do put them on an affordable repayment plan, and as a last resort, they may be moved on to a prepayment meter.
Against their will.
So, well, as a last resort, but there is a long way to go before you get there. What I'd say to any customer who is struggling to pay their bills or worried about what they're hearing today is please do proactively get in touch with your energy company and make sure you get access to the help and advice that is available. Now, I know right now that doesn't feel like it's going to be enough to tackle the sorts of prices we're putting out today. That's why we are saying to the new government, it's only 10 days to wait, we'll work closely with you, but all of us need to act urgently and decisively to tackle this problem to make sure we look after customers this winter.
Jonathan Brearley, Chief Executive of Ofgem, thank you.
Thank you.